Democratic leaders finally be able to stand up to this extreme brand of politics, or is it just going to be Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman as the only Democrat with an ounce of moral clarity and courage? Here with more tonight's stories, Senator Fetterman is with us. What's your reaction to this? Because to me, this represents nothing of the old Democratic Party that we once knew.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, the kind of people that are trying to run out of office. I mean, they're just good traditional kinds of Democrats you would have expected in New York City now, and now this has just become really, it's just been the dancing days of the dirtbag left. You know, with some of these candidates are outrageous. You know, you have candidates, they abolish ICE, abolish the police, abolish the border. And she even said F Kamala Harris and more of these outrageous kinds of things. And then you have like Mamdani. He was grieving. Hamas sniper was killed by Israel just the other day, and he was grieving that. I mean, these are an emerging, the full pro-Hamas wing. You know, a lot of these candidates that very likely are going to win tonight just declaring a war on just regular Democrats.
All right, let me ask this. Why the deep hatred for Israel? Why?
Yeah, because I mean, if you have such contempt for Israel, I mean, of course, you're also anti-American and you're anti-Western civilization, and you're, anti-capitalism and the American way of life. I mean, now, they're all socialists, of course, and now there's communists and now Marxists, and now they're proud of this. And now, of course, we have P. Hustle in Maine. You know, that's another one. He's a self-avowed, communist too. Now, that's not even looked down on and a significant part of the Democratic Party right now.
All right, let me ask you this. Assuming Mamdani has a good night with his, picks tonight, what does that mean for the Democratic Party nationwide? We've got Graham Plattner, we got Tallarico, you got El Sayed, you got Mamdani, you got Grandpa Bernie and Pocahontas and AOC. If Mamdani has a very successful night tonight in terms of the people he's supporting, what does that mean overall nationally for the Democratic Party?
Well, I mean, there's some people I would include in that, but there's definitely people like the guy in Michigan, but all of them have intensely anti-Israel thing. Now, I remain as really the last Democrat in the Senate that's proud to stand with Israel. Absolutely. And now these kinds of places like that coffee house are calling out a Jew that you're banned, just for what reason? I mean, that's what's becoming part of the Democratic Party. And now hating on Israel and essentially anti-Semitism has become like, the center of a lot of these primaries across the country, and definitely that we're witnessing in New York City.
But Senator, years gone by, you would be considered a mainstream Democrat. I was very close to Joe Lieberman, for example, a great guy. He would not want to be a part of this movement either. You're like the only person that is standing against it. What about the other people in your party? Where's Chuck Schumer? Where are other prominent Democrats? Why won't they speak out against this madness?
I mean, I'm proud to stand with Israel. Whether if I'm the last Democrat, here or not, I'm proud to stand with Israel, and I'm going to call out what I'm witnessing all across the country in all of these races. And you have these kinds of candidates that are actively trying to cram as much anti-Israel and essentially anti-Semitism into their platform. And now these are the kinds of people that are winning right now. Now, whether it's a Nazi tattoo or if it's actually someone like that Chevalier going to the pro-Hamas rally on 10/8 after 10/7 and celebrating the 10/7 massacre. Look at these kinds of people and the circles that they're in. Look at the kinds of things that Mamdani's wife had liked on social media, the kinds of music that she listens to, these views, that thing, just intensely Israel and intensely anti-Jewish. Now,
Well, let me ask you this, because assuming they keep winning, let's say Mamdani has a big night tonight in terms of the people that he supports. What does that say for the future of people like you? Because I kind of look at you now on an island by yourself. What does it say about the future of the Democratic Party if formerly a mainstream Democrat like yourself is not even wanted in the party? Why do I think they will go after you? Why do I think they would want to primary you? Why do I think they would like to replace you with a more radical person?
and well, what I'm saying is, of course, I mean, yeah, people will come against me, and if the Democrats want a dirtbag with a Nazi tattoo, well, they've picked that in Maine, and he knows he'll win here. But whether it's P. Hustle or whether it's come of these radical people in Michigan or the ones in New York City that seems like they're going to win. I read that Lander won, so that's one of his candidates, won. So now that's going to become the lesson that the Democratic Party is going to continue to be anti-Israel, and I'll be the one that's going to continue to lean in and proud to stand with Israel through the midterms, and definitely lean into 28 for sure, proudly.
Let me ask you about Iran, Senator, if I may. I think the president has been very clear. I believe he set back their nuclear program a minimum of 10 years. The president keeps saying he has time. He's not worried about the time frame. He's trying to work out a peace deal. He doesn't want to impact the 94 million people in the population of Iran, which I think is thoughtful. If he ruins the economy, I don't think they have a shot at coming back anytime soon. Do you think the president has adopted the right strategy?
Well, what I will say, I mean, because there's been plenty of people that are really angry or disappointed by the outcome, and there were parts of it that I definitely didn't like and wouldn't support that. But I will say that I will always support, and he made the right decision to actually bomb the nuclear facilities just last year in June. And also Epic Fury was a significant win, too, to significantly degrade the military and to kill the leadership, without a doubt. And there are other parts of it that I don't support or really understand. But as long as I'm going to continue to follow Israel through all of this and their interest and the kinds of security that they demand, and for me, that's why I was being the only Democrat that would vote and continue to vote for it, just as if this afternoon, the nuclear dust. Now, I think I've read now the Iranian Revolutionary Guard agreed now to allow UN to check it out. But whatever that is, but we can't ever allow to Iran to acquire a nuclear bomb. And now I would like to remind people too, the Iranians were effectively like the Nazis of another time. Wouldn't you look at a president that was trying to destroy the Nazis? And was it a complete victory? But no, you would look back and say that was the right thing to strike and try to destroy Iran. This is the kind of region they would kill every one of us, and they would love to destroy the Israeli civilization. Yes.
This just broke. Dan Goldman, who is discriminated against today, just lost to the Mamdani candidate. That race now has been called. Brad Lander beat Dan Goldman. That surprised me.
Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me. I fully expect that, and I think you're going to see. I can almost guarantee, the one that calls to abolish police, abolish the border. There are no reasons to deport anybody, and abolishing prisons. I mean, she said all of this. She actually said F Kamala Harris. I mean, these are the people who we are electing, and they're going to send them here to Congress. Someone who wants to abolish our border and abolish prison, that's not a Democrat. That's a full-on lunatic. I can't imagine, this is the kind of model that we're going to win real elections. Yeah, you can elect someone like that in a district in New York, but when you're in a state like Pennsylvania, that's going to keep you honest. And my views now have put me out an outlier. But that is beyond absurd. Now, as we continue to witness what's happening, whether in Maine or in Michigan or here, you're going to see what's going to happen here in New York as well.
All right. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.